And we're back here, SwamiLee's Sports Talk. I'm SwamiLee.
I am Mellow Mike.
And we're here to talk about some current baseball because there's a couple things going on here in the Phillies world. And we're going to jump right into it. No banter, no nothing. Let's talk about the most important topic affecting Phillies fans right now. And that is, do you know what that is, Mike?
I would go out on a limb and say that it is the overhaul of the front office and the hope maybe that one Dave Dombrowski brings.
That would be partially correct. Actually, it is correct, but it's what bringing Dave Dombrowski will do for the Phillies, and that's going to be the key right now. He is a winner. I think that his history shows that. 2 championships plus 3 World Series appearances with different teams. I do have concerns. They say he destroys minor league systems. And Mike, what's the good thing we don't have to worry about?
Well, we were already barren, so he can't make a bad situation any worse.
100% correct. There's nothing he can do to make the system any worse. I mean, until he trades Mickey Moniak and 2 prospects for a 34-year-old reliever whose contract expires at the end of the season. And that's not necessarily a Dave Dombrowski thing. That's what happens when the Phillies, have a guy who's not living up to his potential. Instead of giving him a little bit of time, they usually just ship him out to some place for next to nothing. So from that perspective.
And you know what? In this environment, that seems like the kind of thing that one John Middleton would want them to do because, God forbid he loses $3 because of this pandemic.
I wonder. I mean, I hear the stories. I wonder how true the stories are. I mean, the guy's got enough money. If he loses, what was the number? How much did he allegedly lose? Do you remember what it was?
I think he said $108 million.
I'm guessing to him that's like you and me losing $20. But I could be wrong. Because remember, he's writing it off. He's not losing literally 140 whatever million, whatever that number is. He's not losing that money. He's writing it off. He's losing part of it, but he's not losing it all. And I mean, how much money do you really need? I mean, if you have $1 billion, for example, and you lose $100 million, that means you only have $900 million left. If you think about that. And plus, he's going to get that money back. So let's talk about Dombrowski and that money. So what is the most important thing that Dombrowski can do with the Phillies' money right now? And let's be clear, everybody watching out there, this is not rehearsed. So Mike does not know what I'm thinking, but I think I know what Mike's thinking.
Well, not only is this not rehearsed, but I didn't know this was going to be the topic.
Correct. So
having said that,
is the most important thing?
I note very carefully that you said, what's the most important thing Dombrowski can do with the Phillies' money right now?
Right now, today.
And there's only one thing he could do today that would make a big difference, and that's signing JT Realmuto.
100% correct. Now his market has shrunk. James Tubby McCann is signed with the Mets.
Hold on. I thought Brian McCann was Tubby.
Well, anybody named McCann is Tubby at this stage of the game.
Fair enough.
So it's just like, think about it. How many people have been nicknamed Flash Gordon? Right?
I can only think of 2, and one of them was undeserved, but anyway.
Anyway, back to the story. So you've got Realmuto now down to the Phillies, of course, and there's the thought of the Yankees. The Astros are supposed to be in on him, perhaps, but his contract is now, if you put a gun to my head and say, what's his contract? I'm going to say 5 years, 110, maybe 120 if they push it. And let me tell you something. If the Phillies don't sign him for that, if he signs with Houston for 5 years, $120 million, I will be really ticked off.
As well you should be. The fact is the Phillies have the money, regardless of complaints of losing money. And the fact is, even if they think that's going to be a bad contract in the last year or 2, sometimes you need to overspend to achieve a goal. And unfortunately, the Phillies don't have much leverage in terms of other ways to improve that roster right now.
Well, that's because they didn't sign Trevor May for $1.5 million. And they didn't sign whatever the other reliever's name is for $1 million. I mean, I don't know what the heck they're thinking. The second worst bullpen in Major League history. and they're letting solid major league veteran relievers go elsewhere for $1.5 million. I mean, that's just insanity. I could go on this entire show just screaming about that, but I'm not going to. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what they expect out of that bullpen. But my good God have mercy, they are just freaking awful when it comes to that bullpen and their handling of that bullpen.
Well, if I had to get in their heads, here's what I might be thinking. I think it's safe to say that relief pitchers, more than any other position in Major League Baseball, is one where, except for the true greats, they're a pretty erratic bunch. They can have 2 or 3 good seasons and then, for no apparent reason, go off the rails the next season. And maybe they're hoping that, maybe they're thinking that they had enough players go off the rails that what the players they have are due to bounce back a little bit.
$1.5 million
thinking
for Trevor May? Come on. That's ridiculous they didn't take that. But so let's just hope that Realmuto signs with the Phillies. Let's hope they, decide they're going to spend the 20, because I can find you the money. You want me to find you the money? You ready? Arrieta's contract is up, right? That's $25 million. You gave Realmuto $25 million. That's evened up. Now you say that's great and all, but you need a starting pitcher. Well, here's the thing. Arrieta pitched like a number 5 starter on a good day. They paid Realmuto $10 million last year. You opened up $10 million to pay a starting pitcher now. And they should be able to find, in this market, they should be able to find a starting pitcher for $10 million. Easily.
Oh, for $10 million, they should find somebody who's a big improvement over what they got from Arrieta most of the time.
Without a doubt. What a horrible signing, but that's a show for another day. So, Mike, we're going to take this a little differently now. Usually this is the time where you hammer me with questions or things like that. Well, I'm doing things a little different today. I'm going to hit you with them.
Okay.
And the second part of the show is going to be dedicated to a former Philly. And you have no idea who it is, but I'm about to tell you. That former Philly we're dedicating this second half of the show to. And we're not talking, by the way, we're not talking about this former Philly. We're just dedicating the show to him. And that former Philly is Phillie Keith Moreland. And again, you're saying to yourself, why are we talking about Keith Moreland? And we're not. We're not at all. But we're dedicating the show because the show is entitled, the second half of the show is entitled, Play Me or Trade Me, which is what Keith Moreland said to the Phillies around 1981 before they traded him to the Cubs in the Mike Krukow trade. So, Mike, I'm going to ask you some players, and you're going to say, play me or trade me.
Sure.
And we're going to start out with Jean Segura. Play me or trade me.
An easier question you will not ask. Trade me. Not only should he be traded,
okay,
but if they have to eat a little bit of salary to get rid of him and replace him with someone who's going to be more useful, so be it.
Well, that's great, but we got to take this a step further because, of course, it's easy to say trade a player, but who is going to take him and how much money is it going to cost? In other words, he's owed roughly 2 years, 28, I believe it is, give or take a penny. It might be a buyout at the end. I'm not certain. So at what level is it that, how much money do you have to take to make a trade? Forget the return because I don't care because, honestly, if they could trade him for future considerations and cover only a small part of the money, I'd make that trade tomorrow.
Okay, well, there are going to be managers and general managers in the American League who remember Jean Segura playing not quite like garbage when he was in the American League. And there's got to be someone who has a need to fill on that side of the infield who is willing to spend, say, $10 million a year on Segura, let the Phillies eat roughly $4 million a year if you're right about the 28 figure.
It's rough, but it's probably right. Okay, so you're saying you'd eat up to $8 million of the contract, am I correct?
Assuming a $28 million, yeah, roughly $8 million.
So if a team said, we'll give you our, double-A 24-year-old reliever and you cover $14 million of the salary, are you taking the deal?
If I thought that reliever would fill a need now.
The reliever is not the key to the deal. It's the money that's key to the deal. I can ask this to you a different way.
No, you don't have to ask a different way because I can tell you Yes.
Okay, so you're saying to me if you could sign Gene Segura to a 2-year, $14 million contract right now, you would not?
No.
Okay, well, let's move on to our next player, and that would be Scott, not Mike, Kingery. Play me or trade me?
Oh, boy. Well, that's a tougher one. And, he seems like a nice kid. I'd like to see him succeed. I certainly hope that now that he has a real manager and not Gabe Kapler, that he will continue to grow as a player. I don't think we've seen the best of Kingery yet. So I'd say play me.
Okay, so we keep Kingery, we trade Segura in a perfect world.
Yes.
And I think if Kingery gets 400 at bats, we'll know whether he's worth keeping or not. I agree with you. We need to see if he brings anything to the table. He could just be another bust. Wouldn't surprise me. But he hasn't earned that yet. He needs more time before he can be determined on that. So next, play me or trade me, Vince Velasquez.
It's easy to remember him striking out 16 in a complete game 5 seasons ago now.
Against the Padres, I believe.
Side note, I was at his next start after that game, a home game against the Mets, and let's just say it didn't quite go that well. And unfortunately, what we've seen from Vince has been a lot more of what I saw against the Mets. Yep. 2 2/3 innings, 7 runs or thereabouts. So, you know what? What did they tender him for? $4.5
million, I think. $4.5 to $5 million.
$4.5 million for somebody who they think is going to be a 5th starter / bullpen guy. I hate to say that money factors into it, but of course it does. And you know what? I'm going to give Vince Velasquez one more chance to find his niche, whether it's a late rotation guy or a bullpen guy. I mean, he's shown he can pitch in the major leagues. He just can't keep it together long enough. And maybe a new pitching coach, maybe call me a fool, but I'm not going to give up on him yet. I'm almost there, but not yet.
Here's my prediction. Assuming we have a full season or close to a full season, he goes like 11-7, 3.84. He's a free agent at the end of the year, I believe. He gets a 5-year, $70 million contract in Kansas City or Minnesota or something along those lines. So he finally puts the Phillies a decent season, and he goes somewhere else. So those are my predictions for Vince Velasquez. So I got one more for you. Okay, one more for you. Play me or trade me, Rhys Hoskins.
I know people hate it when questions are answered with questions, but what are they going to get for him? I mean, at this point, does he really have much of a trade market?
Probably not. Here's my biggest concern about Rhys Hoskins. I'm okay this year. Like, I don't need to get rid of him. He's a solid player. He's not a stud like I thought he'd be, but he's a solid player. And I don't mind paying him whatever his market value is. And you know something? I'll pay him next year, assuming he has an okay year. I'll pay him his market value next. I like him. I mean, I do like him as a player. Here's my concern. Free agency. The year before free agency, he hits 256, 32 home runs, 100 RBIs. The pressure is on because he's a fan favorite for the Phillies to give him a big contract. What happens when you give a first baseman a big contract? 9 times out of 10, if not 99 out of 100.
The only ones I'm thinking of are guys who went on the decline after the big contract.
Well, we could start with our own Ryan Howard. Granted, there was an injury, but still, he did nothing for his money. We can move on to Albert Pujols. Okay?
That's who I had in mind.
We can go on to Eric Hosmer. We can go on to Joey Votto. Now, don't misunderstand. Votto gave the Reds a lot of good seasons. But when you have... And Hoskins isn't getting 8 to 10 years. I don't care what happens. But, you know, and Hosmer, 8 years, 160 isn't that crazy. I mean, he could have been, you know, 6 years, 160, the way the market was at the time he signed that. But it seems to be a failure when you give a first baseman the money, because all you're getting a one-dimensional power hitter that brings nothing else to the table. And that's where my concerns are. And I'm afraid that he's going to do just well enough to get 5 years, $110 million, and bat 243, 26 home runs, 84 RBIs the first year of that contract.
Well, we can certainly hope that one Dave Dombrowski doesn't fall for that and give him that big contract.
Well, we'll see how that happens. We'll see if Dombrowski's still here or if he's in Memphis by the time that rolls around. There's a lot of things that could be going on, but it's my biggest concern. So, bottom line, are you trading Hoskins?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So, we're running out of time here. So, before we leave you guys for the day, we want to send our condolences out to a Philly legend, one of the greatest players of all time, one of the larger-than-life players that we've has seen in our lifetime that unfortunately neither myself nor Mike were able to truly appreciate due to our age. And Mike, who might that be?
Dick, don't call me Richie Allen.
Yes, we lost him last week. It's a shame. It's a shame he was not in the Hall of Fame before this happened. But, baseball has to do their thing. If only he had friends on the committee like Phil Rizzuto and Harold Baines, he would have been in the Hall of Fame years ago. But to Dick Allen, his family, the condolences from SwamiLee's Sports Talk. You'll be missed. I met you one time, very briefly, at a Phillies event around 1999. And it was I was in the presence of greatness. So one thing I've been saying about that for the last 20 plus years is I felt like I was in greatness was around me. Mike, any final thoughts?
Well, if you were to ask me to name an athlete, Philly or otherwise, who I had seen in his prime, Dick Allen would be at the top of the list. No question.
I'm with you. Very, very, very sorry loss there for Philadelphia and, of course, the Allen family. Well,
my sympathies to Dick's family and his friends and his former teammates.
Well, thanks for joining us. Hate to end you on a somber note, but thanks for tuning in to SwamiLee's Sports Talk. We'll see you again soon. I'm SwamiLee.
I'm Mellow Mike.
Thanks for checking us out.
Bye-bye.